Hello everyone, it's time to do another deck profile, this time on my updated Greedon Masque deck for Divine Set 1. Since I didn't do one on Set 13, since Divine Set 1 was revealing some Greedon support or Desired Devil support, so I decided to just wait it out until Divine Set 1. And changes, it actually gave some decent changes actually, like actual decent support from the two sets. First off, we got a new card that can give you another additional attack, not like we really need another one, but it does help, and it was free, while also now making use of the energy mechanic, and at the same time, a few new fun combos that you can actually do with this deck. But other than that, the deck still functions around the same thing, just restanding your Vanguard by sucking in your standing rear guards, and basically just multi-attacking with the Vanguard. Of course, we still don't have the part where you can restand it twice compared to regular Greedon, but Greedon Masque is more consistent, so Greedon Masque is technically better. But other than that, it's still just a fun deck. I like the art design, and I mainly built this deck in the first place because of the SP Greedon along with regular Greedon at the time, but ended up liking Greedon as a deck overall since it is kind of fun. But other than that, I only wish that they change up the ride line, because the ride deck cards need some huge updates. And maybe a new grade 3, but at the same time we don't really need to go there since Greedon Masque is pretty good by itself as a main grade 3. But anyway, let's begin. And of course, since it's Masque deck and I run Dragon Tree Wretches, you're going to need the Dragon Tree markers. Starting off from the ride deck, we start off with Chamusuke, and then we go to the grade 1 Desired Devil Ghoulman, where when rolled upon by Bokutashu, which is the grade 2, reveal the grade 3 Greedon. It has to be this one. From your ride deck, and draw a card, which is a funny condition. And then the second skill, which you actually might be using again now, because when put to soul from your Vanguard's ability, you can counterblast one and give the Vanguard the Battle Door effect. You're going to be able to Superior Call from Soul again because of Divine Set 1, giving you some decent support to call from Soul. And unfortunately, you have to run this for the ride deck, where when rolled upon by this Greedon, you can put a card from your hand to soul to search your deck for a copy of itself and add to your hand, with the second skill where if you are on this Greedon while at soul, plus 5k while you have 4 more damage. And meaning more copies means more power, but unfortunately since you're on Greedon Masque, you're not going to be able to use the second skill. So you're really just using this for ride deck purposes, and this is what I mean that the ride deck really needs a huge update. In which we go to Avid Sirius Demonic Dragon Greedon, where when you have another copy of it in soul, your death count becomes 7. Of course, with stuff like Vladimir coming, if your skill gets negated, you're gonna lose if you're at 6 damage. So remember that one. But the second skill, where you might still use it, where at the end of battle attack, you can suck 4 of your standing rear guards to soul and restand it, and plus 15 key power, you have 10 or more cards in soul, which is not gonna really happen, but you can actually get the restand multiple times. It is possible, but most of the time you're not going to be on this. You just mainly use it for Greedon Masque at this point. In which now we go to the main deck itself, starting off with the 4 Greedon Masque. Once again, since it's Masque unit, you can only ride it on top of the basically a form of itself, and your death count becomes 7 by default without any condition, so I love that. And the main skills are banish its old identity, and then look at top 7 cards of your deck for a Desired Devil. And the main skill is that once per turn at the end of battle discard tech, if you have at least 3 or more cards in soul that are Desired Devil, put 3 of your standing rear guards to soul and stand this unit and plus 5k. So it gets less power, but sucks 1 less rear guard to soul. Very important because that 1 rear guard makes a difference, and it's more consistent overall. Even if it's a once per turn, you could just suck your 3 back rows and you don't even need to give up anything in the front row. And that's something very consistent about Greedon Masque. It also lets you search, but you're not going to do that too often. It's just there. You only mainly do it for the restand skill, and that's what makes this deck really threatening, really. It's just the constant restand and all the extra abilities that you can give to your Vanguard. And then since this is a Masque deck, I run 3 Masque of Hydrogram. Very important for you to go to Greedon Masque because that's going to be your main grade 3, and you want to go there as soon as possible, but you don't want to run too many of these because it can be bricky. In which we go to a new grade 3 that was from set 13, Desired Devil Mushin, which from Soul and your Vanguard is Greedon attacked if it's the second attack, aka after the restand, and you don't have a same card and you don't have a copy of this card in your rearguard, you may call this from Soul to rearguard, but for the rest of the turn, you cannot put cards to the Soul with your Vanguard's ability and plus 5k. So basically, it's perfect with Greedon Masque because if you use this with regular Greedon, you're not going to be able to do the multi-restand. But with Greedon Masque, you're not going to do another restand anyway, so it wouldn't even matter. And being another additional rearguard that can attack for 18k at least is pretty nice. And it does help in those occasions where, since you're going to be sucking your rearguards to soul, you might be lacking field. So it's just a nice way to basically be a card to be stuck to soul just to recall it. But I don't want to run too many of these. 4 is too many when I was running 4. So 3 is pretty good. And 2, there are too many occasions that my whole front row is already filled, so there's no point of calling this. So that's it for the grade 3, now to the grade 2. First off, I run an additional copy of Bokukashu. The reason why I decided to run an additional copy despite how bad it is for Greedon Masque is mainly for the search. The fact that the grade 2 can still put you a card from your hand to soul, which can be another Desired Devil, and it's very helpful to do that sometimes. It's just very nice, and I don't want to be searching empty-handed, so I decided to run another copy of this so I can search the copy of itself. And yes, I have faced many scenarios where you would be soul blasting a card and then you're going to be missing your 3 Desired Devil target in your very first grade 3 with Greedon Masque. So I want another way just to get another Desired Devil to soul just in case I need to play the soul blast of the Dragon Tree Wretch. And then Desired Devil Frugo, which when put to soul by Greedon, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. And then the second skill is when your Greedon attack while it's on soul, you can bind this card to give their Greedon the ability to battle Dora effect for the battle, which is pretty nasty, especially since you can suck multiple of these and still actually battle Dora multiple attacks in one turn. But this is just overall just pretty good because it's just another target for you to suck to soul and extra removal. And then a new Desired Devil card, which is Desired Devil Arkill, where on placed on rear during main phase, you can Energy Blast 3. So now we're finally making use of the energy. Choose a Desired Devil from your soul with a different name from this and call it to rearguard. This is just very helpful since you're going to be sucking a bunch of Desired Devil to soul, and it could even be the Ghoulman, hence why I would say it's very helpful. And just overall, basically lets you get pluses. I was thinking about running the Desired Devil that calls from top from deck, along with this since you could combo off from each other. But there are so many options for you to call from deck already that I kind of just want more options outside from deck. So not entirely necessary, especially another support card from set 13 directly for Masque, which is actually better than the Desired Devil, even though you want to be searching Desired Devil more often, but still. But I do find so much use for this because you're not really using energy, so just having a card that lets you use energy is already nice, and it's a +1 with it. But the second skill is front row rearguard once per turn. When your grade 3 Greedon attacks, until the end of turn, this card gets 5k power, but your damage zone has 4 or more cards, plus another 5k. So basically, plus 10k if you have at least 4 damage. This is just pretty decent for a big beater, plus also color, hence why you want to run good numbers. But not too many because you need some time to fill up your soul. And then to a new card from set 13 that is support for Masque, Red Eye Governing Ruler Ledakia, where on placed on rearguard, if your Vanguard is Masque, aka your Greedon Masque, counterblast 1 to top 5 cards of the deck, choose a grade 3 or less card with different name from this card and call it to rearguard, and then bind a trigger from your drop zone. You could technically ignore the bind trigger from drop zone, but it does help the second skill where during your turn, if you have at least 3 or more triggers, plus 10k. But this is just better than the Desired Devil one because Desired Devil one from the direct top card, while this one lets you call from the top 5. Yes, it is a sacrifice of Desired Devil name, but considering the amount of ways that you can plus, it's not super necessary, especially since you don't want to accidentally call the Mask of Hydrogram, which you're not going to be able to call. And also, this being a big beater on its own is also very nice, and I think the sacrifice of the Desired Devil name is worth it. And then I run the 2 Mask of Hydrogram Searcher because Mask of Hydrogram Search, it's also a unit, which is also very important. So I decided to split it up. And like I said before, sometimes you will be soul blasting this while you're still on regular Greedon while not being able to fill up the correct amount of soul, which you need 3. And the minute you need to soul blast something, you're going to be at 2 Desired Devil Soul. So that's why I still run that grade 2. And this still makes more sense to run. And then finally, Clean Sweep Dragon. Yes, I could run the generic for Divine set 1, but I don't have enough copies of it, so it's going to be this as the alternate option. But either way, it's a huge beater on its own, especially on the Persona Ride turn, and you can suck 3 of your opponent's rearguards to soul, which is basically good removal. So that's it for the grade 2 lineup. To the grade 1 lineup, here is Bupetsu. This is not as great for Greedon Masque, But with the new support of Divine Set 1, this has got a little better in my opinion. Because when Sucked to Soul by your Vanguard's ability, you can Counter Blast 1 to choose a card from your hand to call it to rearguard, and if you have at least 10 cards in Soul, you draw a card, which you're not going to usually get the bonus, you mainly get it for the superior call. And it used to be in a way where when you would just use regular Greedon, you can suck multiple of these to Soul and then refill your board with 4 rearguards so your Greedon can attack again and suck 4 and to restand again for the 3rd attack. With Greedon Masque, there's not as much of a point to it, but I have found some use for this with the new support card of Divine Set 1. And that's because one new support is a grade 1 and I actually found pretty decent use, like I said. In which it's Desired Devil Gojo. Because when Sucked to Soul from rearguard from your Greedon, you can Energy Blast 3 to put this card back to your hand. And since you don't really use too much energy, and by the time that you hit grade 3, you're either going to be 6 or 9 energy, that's not too bad. So the idea here is that you would use Bumbetsu to get sucked along with this. This card can Energy Blast 3 to put this back to your hand, and then Bumbetsu can use its skill to recall this. So basically you can get a booster back and you have an easy call target that was sucked back to your hand. It's just a little combo I found, and I actually found it very helpful, especially being able to call boosters because that's just basically extra power right there. But the second skill is also very helpful because if you do not call it and you brought it back to your hand, if you have at least a grade 3 Greedon and your damage zone has 4 more cards, shield plus 5k. So being a 10k shield is also pretty nice to be bounced back. But I found in many scenarios using Bumbetsu with Gojo is just very nice. But if you have to keep the Gojo in your hand, that's fine. You still got 10k shields, and having more defensive value is not too bad, especially since it saves you for more rearguards for you to suck. And then finally, for PGs, because I don't have enough copies of Elemental Sanctitude, so I'm still just running the 4. Either way, don't need to pay $25 for a PG. And then let's go for the OT, and this one's pretty perfect for it since it's a Vanguard-centric deck. 8 crits, 3 draws. I might switch this out for front since with Greedon Masque, fronts is actually a little better than having regular Greedon, but at the same time, key piece heavy, so you do want to still draw your pieces as soon as you can, but it is up to you. And finally 4 heals. So that's it for this deck profile, my Greedon Masque deck. What do you guys think of it? What cards would you recommend other than Regalia's Piece, because Regalia's Piece is expensive? But on that, what do you guys think of it? Overall, I still think this deck is fun and cool, even with the few support. The new support is actually not too bad, especially some combos I found. But on that, it's not like it's a very competitive deck. It's just meant for fun. And I hope you guys enjoy this deck profile and tell me like what other cards I might have missed or what you guys would recommend. And also, before I go, do you guys hope for a new ride line for Greedon along with a new grade 3? I mean, with Greedon Masque, it doesn't really matter, but the new ride line is definitely needed, especially the grade 1 and 2. But on that, it's time to say goodbye.